All right, Dr. Jeff Scott, we are live. Thanks for hopping on today, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, no worries. Always happy to be on the show. Always happy to be on the podcast.
So, for those who don't know, Dr. Jeff Scott is the other upper cervical chiropractor at Montclair Upper Cervical. And today we have a very important topic, what upper cervical is all about, holding your adjustments. And as you know, we say holding is healing. We don't want to give you an adjustment every time you're in the office. We want to do it as few times as possible, have it stay in place so your body starts to heal. You get the 100% nerve flow and blood flow back, and your body starts to heal without us, because that's what it's all about. That's why upper cervical was such a beautiful thing. So Dr. Jeff and I have many patients that hold for a very long time, and we want to share with you some tidbits on how to hold your adjustments as long as possible, because that's where you're going to get that full healing effect. So the most important thing after an upper cervical adjustment, Dr. Jeff and I are just going to go over some do's and don'ts. We tell everybody to give your body the best chance to heal right after the adjustment. So, first of all, after we adjust people, we don't want them to get up off the table right away. We want to keep them there. We lay them on their side right after the adjustment for 3 or 5 minutes. We want them to be completely still and just let the adjustment sink in. And then after that, we swing them up. We rest them in our back room for about 20 minutes to just let the adjustment sink in. And then this is where we go over, after that adjustment period, we go over the do's and don'ts to help you hold that adjustment. So, Dr. Jeff, what do we always say 48 hours after care? What do we want you to do? What do we want you to stay away from to give your body the best benefit of healing? Because that 48-hour mark, your head's going to be in a different position. Your posture is going to be different. Your muscles and ligaments are not going to be used to its new position, and we want to keep it there. So what are some of the things we share with our patients to really stay away from, first of all, over the first 48 hours?
Absolutely. Usually, usually the first thing we usually ask patients is like, do you have any kind of exercise plan in mind that you've been doing? And then we try to educate them on maybe taking a couple of days off, allowing the body a chance to rebalance itself and kind of adapt, as you so said. Big thing is we always say overhead activity. So especially with exercise, so pull-ups, chin-ups, lat pull-downs, shoulder press. Obviously, if we have patients who are really into fitness and are doing like heavy barbell work, like even something like shoulder flies or shrugs, we usually tell patients to avoid those because that can do any kind of those movements, does a lot of pulling on the neck, the trap, even the, cervical erectors and the deeper muscles as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what you just said before, you really want to have your schedule clear after your first upper cervical adjustment. It may be possible to hold your adjustment after doing a workout because your body's used to it. But like we said, holding is healing, and we want it to stay in place. So if you go and do a heavy workout 2 hours after we give you your first adjustment, the body is so used to being in its old position, it might just go right back to the way it wants to be. And you're just going to erase your first adjustment. So we always say, have your schedule clear, most definitely the first day after your first adjustment. And just to be safe, 48 hours to really give it some time to sink in, because we want it to stay there. So those are some things to not do after the first adjustment. But we don't want you not doing anything. So it is important to keep movement. The way our spine gets its nutrients is a process called imbibition. So there's not a direct blood supply to the spine. So the way our discs stay hydrated is through movement. When you move around your spine, the discs soak up fluid and they stay hydrated. When you sit down all day at a desk, traffic, you are actually compressing the discs. Think of it like a sponge. The sponge is being compressed. The fluid is draining from the sponge, and your discs don't stay hydrated. So movement is key. So you can go for a walk, keep everything moving. But for that first 48 hours, you definitely just want to be relaxing, walking around. But we don't want you just laying in bed all day, because that's not good for it either. One other big question we get from a lot of our patients is how should I sleep at night?
Hmm.
What do we usually tell them, Jeff, for sleeping?
Well, usually we always start off by asking them what their normal sleep position is. Obviously it's either the back, the sides, or the stomach, and people usually rotate between those. Um, Depending on what the patient says, we try to educate them a little bit of like, back on your back is the best, sides are second best. So usually either of those is ideal. We also will tell patients, if it's not going to be the most beneficial for your neck if you're sleeping on your stomach with your head turned to the left or to the right for 6 hours on end. So we usually start with the sleeping position, and then we ask them how many pillows they're using, and then try to educate them that if you're using a lot of pillows and you have your head kinked up or, rocked down, that's also going to put some tension on the spine and the muscles. So we want them to be as neutral as possible, like when we're giving them an adjustment on the table.
And another question we get a lot is, what pillow should I be using? And pillows are a very personable thing. What I find comfortable in a pillow, you may hate.
Yep.
And what's the goal? It's for you to fall asleep and be comfortable and wake up well rested. So
Hmm.
what we find comfortable in a pillow, you may not like, and if it's keeping you up at night, it's not a good pillow for you. So we usually recommend whatever's going to keep your head nice and neutral while you're sleeping. What Dr.
Hmm.
Jeff said before, you don't want your head tilted up or down, nice and neutral, whether it's memory foam, Tempur-Pedic. There's so many different pillows out there.
Yeah.
So we just recommend whatever is going to keep you nice and comfortable, nice and neutral, and it's going to help you fall asleep. Another thing we say is try not to fall asleep all twisted up on the sofa watching TV with your head in a different position or a weird position. That's going to put some stress on the neck, especially after your first adjustment. So we usually like to say sit up nice and tall on the couch, and just be very conscious of your posture for the first couple days.
Yeah.
And so now that we've talked about the first 48 hours, let's talk about what you can do and jump back into after your first adjustment. So, Jeff, what do we usually say to new patients that they are active,
Hmm.
they do work out a lot, and they want to continue their fitness care?
Absolutely. So I think we take that one of two ways, and I think it depends on the severity of the case, and it depends on the severity of the symptoms the patient's having. For patients that are active, are having, maybe it's mild to moderate symptoms. It's causing disruption in their life, but it's not like severe or more of the severe neurological symptoms where it's really impacting their life. We'll usually tell them like, you can try going back and continue your exercise. I know we've talked about some of our jujitsu patients or mixed martial artists who have been in that environment and are used to that. They might be okay to return because their neck, their ligaments, their muscles, they're used to having that type of tension and type of strain on them. Someone who's been working out for years at a time, they might be able to get away with it a lot more sooner because their body is already has that neuromuscular conditioning. For patients though that are a little bit more severe, after we've given them some time to allow everything to mold around the newly corrected spine, we usually say start off light, start with resistance band, build up that neuromuscular conditioning, build up that tone, let the muscles adapt to their new position, their new, proprioception, and how they want to respond. Because you might, as you said, when you first started doing that and getting back into exercising, you might get really, really fatigued. And nowadays, with the amount of resistance bands and things along those lines, you can get pretty heavy resistance just from the bands alone. Can recondition the muscles, let the body get back into it, and then start adding back in the weights, usually lower rep or lower weight, higher reps, and then build back up to what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, that's a good point. For all our we have a lot of jujitsu patients. We have a lot of fitness trainers and people that like to lift, throw around some heavy weights, and they've been doing it for a
Mm-hmm.
while. So we're obviously not going to tell those people to just stop working out completely for 6 weeks, especially if if someone's coming in for like you said, they don't have a lot of neurological issues going down, maybe they have more musculoskeletal. We want those people working out. We don't want them not doing anything. We do want them going for more repetitions than really. What I find will probably throw you out is if you're going for your max outs and your whole body starts to just shake and convulse. That's putting a lot of pressure on the neck. You don't want to do that, but you do want to stay active and tone everything back up. And usually I would say your first workout back after an upper cervical adjustment, everything's going to be in a new position. So you want to get those muscles used to its new position. So start off very light. Whatever exercise you like doing, do with the resistance bands first to retrain your muscles. That's where your head wants to be without throwing it back out of alignment. A little side story of when I first started upper cervical care, I would get adjusted and I thought I needed to strengthen my neck right away because my neck felt unstable. It felt weak. And I said, all right, I need to start strengthening my neck. So I was doing chin tucks, isometric neck presses from the physical therapy exercises I was given. And I would come back into the office and they would say, oh man, you're out of alignment again. And I said, oh, why is that? I'm not really doing much. I'm just doing isometric neck exercises. And the problem with that right off the bat is what we talked about before. The muscles and ligaments are trying to mold around your adjustment. And when you start directly affecting the neck musculature, it's going to put a lot of stress and it's going to want to go back to where it wants to be or where it used to be. So you're going to be able to do all that stuff again. I always tell patients, you're going to be able to do everything you used to be able to do and even better because everything is now balanced. The spine is in where it needs to be, and you're going to be able to lift more weights, handle more stress on the spine. You just got to give it its necessary time to stay put and be there. From what Dr. Jeff and I usually see, depending on the case, it's usually in between 4 to 9 weeks. It gets really locked in place. And listen, we do have people that it gets pretty locked in the first week. So if you really want to test it. But just keep in mind, the longer this holds in place, the faster you're going to heal. So like Dr. Jeff said earlier, if you're having a ton of neurological symptoms, you got to think to yourself, it's really not worth jumping back right into that heavy weightlifting because you feel good when you're in and you feel like death when you're out. So just think about the long run. And then once it starts holding, you're going to be able to do everything you wanted to do and even better. Anything to touch on that, Jeff?
Nope. Just pretty much everything that you said. The goal here is to get those neck adjustments to hold as long as possible. We obviously want people to be active and fit. It's just might be a matter of titrating what's necessary to allow the neck to get back in place, which is the goal, get you feeling better, and then starting to layer on activity because the body is reconditioning itself. It's no different than someone learning to run a marathon, someone, getting into trying to play a sport. Like there's time that you need to take to recondition. And your body's literally going from one set that it's used to, and now it's got to recondition and recalibrate itself to this new position, and that takes time.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of patients that come into our office right off the bat, and they think they have ligament instability, and they think they're not going to hold their adjustments. And we find that not to be the case. And so we get a lot of questions about prolotherapy, PRP, platelet-rich plasma therapy, stem cell therapy.
Yeah.
And those are all great options. They're going to definitely strengthen your ligaments. On the flip side, it's a pretty penny to get those injections, and you may not need them. So I usually say we're not even thinking about prolotherapy or PRP until like 8 months into care because Dr. Jeff, you've seen, we've had people that we didn't think it was possible that there would be holding 6 to 8 months into care, a year into care, because the beginning was a little bit of a bumpy road. They weren't holding their adjustments well, and the ligaments take the most time to heal. They
Yep.
can take a while to heal, and so I usually say give it 8 to 9 months before you even considering PRP. It's a great alternative to strengthen the ligaments, but you may not need it. Upper cervical might be able to take care of the rest.
hmm And the difference there is it's just the lens that we're looking through. It's the idea of saying, like, if you have a car and you're constantly replacing the spokes on the car, if the axle is wobbly and is broken and is not moving properly, well, of course you're always going to have extra strain on the wheels because the frame, the foundation of that car is not working properly. So with the neck, if you've got, different joints that are and bones that are shifted out of place, having one ligament slacked, one ligament taut, you can get all the therapy you want. But if that underlying foundation, you can get all the prolotherapy you want, but if that underlying foundation is not at some point addressed, you're just risking having to do it again in the future. And you obviously if you're going to invest that, you want to make sure that if you're giving those ligaments and those structures a chance to heal, that they're in the best position possible.
You just made me think of another good point. Also, some patients come to us from physical therapist offices,
Mm-hmm.
deep tissue massage, and what those practitioners are doing are great.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
100%.
but they're still not taking care of the neurological issues that the patient's having, even some of the muscle tightness. And what we usually
Mm-hmm.
tell is people is you can rub on that muscle all day long, but if you're not getting the proper nerve innervation to that muscle to tell it release, it's never going to let go. So that's
Yep.
why people say they do get some relief after physical therapy and massage for an hour or two, maybe even a day, but it always goes back to that certain tightness. So you first and foremost, you got to get the neurology functioning properly to tell everything to release. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, they come in, they say, I've tried acupuncture, I've tried physical therapy, nothing seems to be working. And then you get the neck put back in place. And then the acupuncture starts working really well. The physical therapy starts to work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it does take a team of people to get people functioning back on track. But
100%.
first and foremost, get that upper cervical neck region clear, because that's where you're going to see a lot of amazing things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually tell people not to get any deep tissue work or neck work done. Probably like 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks into care.
Yeah.
We have our own process of handling that. After we get people adjusted and they start holding for about a week, then we start doing trigger point therapy and light specific neck work, because as we've seen, some people do get very sore after an upper cervical adjustment. The
Mm-hmm.
muscles at some point are going to want to try to pull it back to its old alignment, and the neck is not going to let it. So soreness, tightness could be, it's pretty normal after a first neck adjustment. So that's where we come in with the muscle work the next week, very specifically, very gently, and try to calm everything down. And Jeff, you've seen it. You see people get their range of motion back after that neck work. It's not much. We're not really digging in, but it's enough just to cause those muscles to relax and restore the range of motion.
Yeah, and we definitely, I think we do a good job of phrasing it as like this is support work. Like our goal is again to get that neck alignment in place and holding, so the healing can be, body can heal without interference. And then we're going to decide when patients are healing if there's something that we can do to help that process and help facilitate them continuing to hold. And if that means helping to get a little rid of some muscle tension that might be pulling or aggravating them a little bit, that's where we're very strategic with that.
Absolutely. And one more thing I really wanted to jump into that's so important is
Mm-hmm.
what to expect in the healing process. 6 weeks in,
Mm-hmm.
3 months in, 6, 9, a year into care. As you know, if you're under upper cervical care, these adjustments continue to work long after we give them. And this goes on with the same premise. Holding is healing. You hold your
Mm-hmm.
adjustment, you are going to continue to heal 6 weeks, 3, 6, 9, 12 months into care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we just like to emphasize the first 6 weeks, rapid healing takes place. So you may have, after your first adjustment, it may be the best you have ever felt in a long time. And then the healing process starts. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster. Trying to find the camera here. A little bit of a roller coaster up and down. So when the healing process does kick in, you may get some of your old symptoms, old injuries, old illnesses.
Yep.
Dr. Jeff, it's cool that you are kind of right in the middle of experiencing some of this stuff right now.
Yep.
Why don't you just go over some things? You're probably about 3-4 months into care now.
A
You
little bit
you
more.
took a 5 months.
5.
You've
Yeah.
had a couple ups and downs
Yep.
that are pretty wild. Tell them about your the throat, the tonsils,
Yeah.
and the headache, the tension headache that you never got. Healing can be uncomfortable, and Dr. Jeff has he's had a lot of good days, but also some weird things have been happening that are healing neurologically.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely just really, I'd say the most consistent thing has just been definitely shifting muscle tension, whether it's from the suboccipitals down or the traps, having shoulders feeling rotated and then shoulders not feeling rotated. I would say two of the more interesting ones was the one night my back of my tongue felt like it just kind of swelled up. And I know it probably didn't, but it was just a weird feeling. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I was about to go to bed. So I'm like, okay, keep an eye on this. Then obviously talked to you the next morning. You had something similar happen. I had a tension migraine last week, which was never had that before in my life. So definitely a lot of interesting things. Like I said, usually shifting muscle tension, I would say, kind of going through maybe every now and then having like a low grade headache. Definitely some interesting stuff going on with the hips, the low back, as posturally everything continues to work itself out. So yeah, definitely a lot of interesting things. What's really just been beneficial for me is continuing to try to have that awareness of like, there might be some weird things that happen that I'm not necessarily, it's not a regression. It's the body working through some stuff. And that's one thing I definitely think we try to articulate to the patients. It's like, if you're having tightness, like that might be okay. That might be your body just working through something. No one wants to have, tightness. Obviously it can be irritating, but it's a little bit of trusting the process of like your body has its own agenda. And I think I've mentioned it to you. A patient's body is far smarter than me. It's far smarter than you or any healthcare provider. It's got to have its own agenda and knows what it needs at that time. So kind of just trusting your body to take care of itself and realizing you might have some hills and some valleys, but like over time, those hills and valleys are going to get better and better.
Absolutely. And for me, I had a lot of ups and downs through the healing process. One thing was I used to get chronic sore throats and my throat would swell up for a day or two and I didn't feel sick. It was literally just my throat. And then 2 days later, it would go away.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one day I woke up and my left trap was burning, just completely felt like it was on fire. And then 6 hours later, it was completely gone and I felt great. There are a lot of ups and downs, especially as the nerves start to heal.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of crazy, weird sensations that happen. Another thing we didn't touch on was fatigue. After an adjustment, a lot of people get very tired and they could be a little bit more fatigued 2-3 weeks after their first adjustment. Now, although you're struggling to stay awake through the day, it's actually a very good thing because there was a lot of pressure on your system that we finally took. Well, we didn't take it away, but we adjusted you. The body wants to relax and heal, and the body does a lot of healing while it sleeps.
Yep.
So if you are feeling fatigued after an upper cervical adjustment, try not to fight it because your body wants to rest, sleep, and heal. And I remember towards 5 or 6 p.m. for the first week or two, it was a struggle to stay awake. I was constantly tired. And then 2 weeks later, my energy levels leveled out.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the 6-week period, you still get some peaks and valleys. It happens like clockwork. Every 3 months, your body starts to go through another healing phase.
Mm-hmm.
So it rests after the first 6 weeks. And then 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, you hit these little repair cycles that last anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. Your symptoms aren't as bad as they used to be, but you may feel some things you haven't felt in a long time. And a good way somebody put it for me was, it's like if you have an injury and your body starts to heal it naturally, like a clock, it gets all the way around to 10 and then it kind of stops,
Mm-hmm.
and then it moves on to the next thing. And then when upper cervical care happens, it remembers the old injury and it takes it from 10 o'clock and it finishes up the healing process and moves it all the way around. So your body, especially if you were an athlete, you've had a lot of trauma, whether it be physical or mental or emotional stuff, your
Mm-hmm.
nervous system remembers everything.
Yep.
And you're probably going to heal through a lot of injuries, and past emotional stuff even comes up. I found myself crying for a couple weeks for no reason. I was not upset or anything. And then when you finally get out of it, you're like, what was I crying about? And it's like, oh wow, that happened to me a long time ago. I completely forgot about it. So not only is it physical, there's a lot of mental and spiritual healing that takes place too.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, it heals you, and I think it takes your structural health to the next level, your mental health to the next level, and it is one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me is upper cervical care, and I can't thank the profession enough.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing and pretty brilliant what happens when you give the body the opportunity to to heal itself. And I think it was BJ Palmer who said the body needs no help, just no interference. So you remove the interference, you allow that internal wisdom that kind of governs your body to do its thing, and kind of your possibilities are endless. I mean, I think we've had patients who, like you said, have right away have started to feel better. We have a couple patients who it's taken closer to a year, maybe a little bit more, but it's like at some point, like if you just are patient and you let your body do your thing and you create an environment where your body can do its thing, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible, especially when you think about some people have been dealing with these things for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years, giving your body just that time. And we're not saying it's going to go from, if it takes a while, we're not saying it's like you're going to be, in misery for 8 months and then all of a sudden the light bulb's going to switch. No, you'll probably start to feel better. You might have more good days. Your bad days might be a little bit less intense or less frequent. But, if you give your body time, eventually it's going to get through those major healing blocks, some healing blocks that you might not even know you have to deal with. And, you know, and that's when the magic happens. And we've had patients who come in, maybe for vertigo, trigeminal neuralgia, other symptoms, and they might, you've heard us say, they've said like, oh, well, I still have maybe some ringing in my ears, but my low back pain is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that was completely secondary and maybe subconscious to them at the time, but now the body took care of that. So that just means that the low back was higher priority in the healing process than the ringing. Now, once it works through stuff, it eventually will get to the ringing.
Absolutely. Better right away. But we also want to mark as a good benchmarker for upper cervical care
Mm-hmm.
to just really to let you know where you're at. So
Yeah.
give it at least 3 months, give or take a couple months, but that's the 3-month mark is a really good position to let you know where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, there's so much information, so much to comprehend under upper cervical care. When I first started care, I had so many questions. Please leave them in the comments. If you want Dr. Jeff and I to make another video on another topic relating to upper cervical, we would love to, because it actually helps us reach more people and explain it a little bit better. So if you have any questions about upper cervical care, if you want us to make any videos or give you a little bit more information on a certain topic, leave them in the comments below. We'll try to make more of these videos at least once a week, and we would love to hear from you. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. For those that just tuned in, this is Dr. Jeff Scott. My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. We are Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractors at Montclair Upper Cervical. And we are here for you. We offer free consultations. We're always willing to, reach out to us on Instagram. We're pretty active on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at Dr. Kevin Pecca. Jeff, what's your handle on Instagram?
I believe I'm at DRJR Scott.
And don't forget about the Expect Miracles podcast on iTunes and Spotify. We have so many great episodes on upper cervical care, different upper cervical doctors, amazing life stories that have been healed and given their life back. So be sure to check that out, and be sure to just tune in for weekly episodes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, guys.